to show y'all how I paint my watercolor florals on my iPad Pro with Fresco. So this is what I've been working on recently. This is my floral pattern. It's got a lot of blue flowers, some pretty orange flowers, and some ferns and leaves. So to get started, let's go to the home. This is what Adobe Fresco looks like when you open it up. And I always like to work with an 18-inch by 18-inch square canvas at 300 dpi. So the reason why I like to use this size canvas is so I know that all of my artwork will be at the right size for print. And I'm going to pick my favorite brush, which I am only using 2 different brushes through this whole artwork. So I have my watercolor lines, which is a thin brush. So you can see a very thin line brush here. And I'm also going to be using pressure shade watercolor brush, and it looks very similar to an actual watercolor painting. So you can seamlessly mix your color here. And if you pick it up and you layer it on top, it's going to add a darker shade to the top, just like it would naturally for any other watercolor paintings. Okay, so to get started with any type of artwork, you always want to have a specific color palette. So I always like to work with a limited color palette here, and this is just to kind of help you with not having to mess with your colors later on while you're trying to work. So let me get this set up here and we will jump right into making those flowers. Okay, so now I have my color palette here, and you can see that it is going to be saved here under my recents. So all of the colors that I like to use for this one is going to be right here, so it's easy to select from. So I'm going to select this dark blue here. So to get started with this floral, you're going to use the watercolor pressure shade or any brush that resembles a watercolor pen. So we're just going to start out with a circle here on our palette and very lightly just go in circular patterns. And you can even come back in and we're going to add some darker shade all around. So with that nice rose pattern, you will always see a spiral pattern. At the top, we're going to kind of let these petals come out off of the circle here. It's okay for them to not be attached completely. And you can always go back in and make these petals a little bit wider from the actual brush itself. So I wanted to point out, the harder you press down on your pencil, the more pigment is going to come out of your brush. And I kind of want to fill in some of these spaces here, just for my own personal preference. And now that I have this finished, this is the base of my flower, I'm going to go in and add a new layer. And then I'm going to change my brush. So to alternate between the last 2 brushes that you've been using, you just have to tap on your pencil. So you're going to double tap, and you can see that this changed. So I'm going to do it again so you can watch. Okay, see how these two values change? It's actually switching my brushes. And I want to make sure that I have the right brush selected that I want, so I'm going to go to my brush panel here and select the two brushes that I like. So this was the first one that I used with the flower, and now I'm going to use my watercolor lines, which is that thinner one. So I do want to change my color, so click on the color circle here, and I want to go to this nice creamy yellow. So now I'm going to start out in the center of the flower, and I'm just going to follow the petals that I've already made here. So to do that, I'm going to start out with a smaller C, and you can change the size of your brush here on the side here, that number. And I'm going to encase that C, and you want it to kind of spiral out so that there's a little bit more of a space in between each line. And that's going to help your flower look a little bit more realistic. And once you spiral out a little bit more, your petals that you are creating with the line can be a little bit more wavy. Alright, so I don't know if you can tell right now, but some of these lines in here have a little hook on the end, and I think that's my own fault. I don't think it's the brush itself. So I'm going to go back in and I'm going to kind of erase those edges. So a really quick and easy way to do the eraser tool, other than just selecting the erase, is you have your brush selected. This little circle right here is what we're going to use. All you do is you tap down on it and the circle will get bigger. So what that does is it's going to make my brush an eraser. And you can just color over the places that you want to erase. Okay, so now I want to make my leaf. So I want to make a layer that's underneath the flower itself. So when you add a new layer, it automatically adds it to the top of the layer that you were just working on. So you want to push down, and then we're going to move it down. So you can click and drag. So this layer is now under the layer that we just made the blue rose on. And now I'm going to go back, and I'm going to make sure that I have my watercolor pressure shade brush selected. And I'm going to change my brush color to this nice dark green. So notice I'm going to keep my brush down the whole time that I am painting here. And the reason for that is so that I can get rid of these lines, because once you pick up your brush, the pigment is just going to multiply on top of each other. So that leaf is very big for the rose that I made. So let me show you how to decrease the size. So you take your lasso tool here, just draw a circle around, and see you'll have a little dotted edge here, and we're going to transform. So now I can click on the edges, the corners here, and just drag it to the right size that I want. And I think that's about right. You can even rotate it here if you want. Okay, and we're going to click done. And make sure you deselect. And then you have your leaf the right size that you want it. So I want to add a little bit more texture here, a little bit more contrast. So I'm going to mask the leaf, and so I can add a different color in here. So with this selected, I'm going to click down, and you have this options panel that opens up, and you're going to mask layer contents. So now everything is red, and what it's doing is it's blocking out anything that's red is going to be blocked out so that you cannot color over it. So in order to edit the actual artwork, we're going to click on this and slide it to the right. And so you have your normal view now. And I'm going to select a different color here so I can show y'all how this mask works. So I'm going to start painting off on the white, but it was red earlier, so that's where my mask is blocked. But once you start painting over the leaf, that is where you can edit. Okay. So now I'm going to make a new layer, and we're going to add lines to the leaf itself. It's still a layer above the green leaf, but it's also below the blue rose. And we will switch back to the yellow color. Double click your pencil and it'll change back to the line brush that we had. And I'm going to start about right here and drag that up. And then I'm going to start adding some lines to the leaf itself. Okay, so that's one flower. If you want to keep your layers separated like this, you are more than welcome to. I'm going to merge them down so I can move it out of the way so I can show you a new flower. And we're going to make a new layer. And let's see, I want to make those pretty orange flowers that I showed you earlier. I don't actually have orange in my panel here, so I'm going to go back and add that in. Okay. So I do want to change the size of my brush because I want the size of the brush to be the size of the petal. So what I'm going to do for this flower is I'm just going to start by making the background petals, and these are going to be really light. And see, it's just kind of fanned out. And I'm going to add more petals to the front of that. We can even do a multicolor flower here. So I'm going to start out with the yellow color that I had with the lines and do the same kind of flower. So just very lightly doing those background petals. And then I'm going to switch back to my orange and do the front petals. You want them shorter than the back ones so you can still see the petals in the back. And now we're going to add the stem. We're just going to make kind of like a V cup and then fill it in to the bottom. So now I'm going to add a little bell shape here at the bottom. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on this one. So we're going to do kind of like a little cup here to hold the petals. And it's okay to overlap them here. And then we're going to add that little bell shape. So I want these stems to be connected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to merge these two together. And I'm going to make these flowers smaller. There we go. That'll be easier to work with. Deselect. let me go ahead and fix this. This is not sitting right with me. This part right here is a little off. Alright, now we're going to add our stem. So now we have the base of our flower here, and what I want to do is go back and add some white lines to emphasize the petals. So you don't have to do it with all of them, but select a couple of petals here and add some lines that go down all the way. I also want to add some lines to this bell shape right here, and that's only to kind of break up that solid form, because that solid form is a little too harsh in contrast with the rose. So there you have two different styles of flowers that cohesively work together. I'm going to show you how to do the berries really quick, and I'm going to show you really fast the ferns that I like to do. And I'm going to go back and use that same beautiful orange color. Go to my watercolor pressure shade brush, and we're just going to make circles here. Now we're going to go back to our watercolor lines, add a new layer. We're going to drag that down. Okay. And we're going to do that yellow shade that we used earlier in here. And we're just going to make little stems. And you can see that the lines didn't really match up, so I'm going to go back in here and touch those up before I move on. It's always a good habit to make sure that if you notice something that needs to be fixed, do it right away, because if you wait, you will forget. Okay, so with the same yellow color, at the opposite end of the berry, from the stem here, I'm going to add a little round element here. And it's okay if this round element sticks up a little bit, and it's okay if it comes down even more. So it kind of looks like you have different perspectives of each berry. We're going to add that highlight line. So now really fast, I want to show you guys those beautiful ferns that we've all been waiting for. So I made the stem first, and we're going to go back and we're going to add those circles to the top. So don't forget about the pressure sensitivity. If you want darker leaves, make some of them darker. We're going to slightly go a little bit bigger here on each leaf as we go down. You don't want to vary too big in size, but you do want to have a gradual size increase as you go down. And there you guys have it. We have 4 different elements from my pattern that I've been working on lately. And stay tuned, and I will keep you guys posted on how to actually put those elements together to create a seamless pattern. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. God bless.